This week's edition of NJBIA's Minding Your Business is brought to you in part by AT&T, helping family, friends, and neighbors connect in meaningful ways every day. From the first phone call 140 years ago to mobile video streaming today, AT&T innovates to improve lives. New Jersey's community colleges aligning education to build an innovative workforce. Find out how your business can join and benefit at njpathways.org. And by New Jersey Business Magazine, providing the critical information needs for New Jersey's business community for more than 65 years.
Welcome to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Well, the 10-year anniversary of Superstorm Sandy is upon us, a time to reflect not only on the storm itself, but also the massive recovery effort that New Jersey successfully underwent thereafter. As the two-term commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection, Bob Martin was one of the major players in that recovery effort, and he is here with us today. Bob, thank you so much for being here.
Bob, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
So folks should know, both online and at home on TV here, that you had the misfortune of having me as your press director for years. I want to thank you for not trading me in for a couple of baseballs, and I also thank you for the opportunity too.
So this is the opportunity for you to get back at me, Bob? Is that the plan?
Yeah. Oh, I'm putting you on the grill now. And also, I should mention to the audience that Bob is currently the managing director of Christie 55 Solutions, which provides strategic counsel, business, and public policy consulting for a wide range of clients. We're going to talk about that in a future episode, what you're doing at Christie 55. But let's talk about Sandy today. Let's go chronologically. What do you recall about the 7 to 10 days before the storm arrived? We kind of knew this was coming. How did we plan?
Well, it's interesting, Bob, because the way we planned, we had a playbook already laid out. Mm-hmm. After Hurricane Irene the year before, we thought we knew everything. We had kind of gone through the drill. We kind of put it together. Even after Irene, we kind of rebuilt our playbook again, both at DEP and across the state. We thought we had that nailed. So we started going through that day by day for preparation, whether it's nuclear power plants, water supply, all different contaminated sites and the work we were doing. So we were getting ready to make sure that we were ready for that event and what was going to happen at it. So it's interesting because, with Hurricane Irene, we did a great job of it, though the water came kind of inland and not on the coast, if you remember that. But the biggest challenge, that we had to learn from that is, again, how do we get ready for storms? And we thought we were ready. Right. Well, guess what? Sandy rewrote the playbook yet again for us.
Well, could you take us behind the curtain about the rush of information the night of the storm? I guess you're at the Rock at this point, which I always have to look up the name of it. It's the Regional Operations Intelligence Center in Ewing Township. What was it like? Was it just mass hysteria, or was it pretty organized? We're going to get through this.
Well, there's two pieces to that. First off, we were prepared every day. The governor had us there preparing, and we did a lot of things in preparation, including one of the first times, in fact, in the state's history, we released water from reservoirs a good 48 hours ahead of the storm to be able to lower the water level so that if there were flooding again, we didn't get the same kind of flooding inland. Right. Most of that water didn't go inland on this storm, but we were prepared. So even things like that happened. But there was a sense of calm and organization all the way through, right through it. It's interesting, that night, the night of the storm, I was at our office at DEP. So we had already done our prep sessions with the governor. I went back around midnight, fell asleep on my couch in the night of the storm itself. And so the peak of it hit that evening. And at that point in time, I fell asleep for about an hour and a half. And I got a phone call from the head of state police, Rick Fuentes, and said, Bob, we have a problem. I'm here. We're staging outside Moonachie and Little Ferry. It's all underwater. And he said, can you tell us, based on your maps, how far should we start staging? And we pulled out whatever maps we had, which are relatively old. Yeah. And we said, I said, probably. We started guessing. We said, maybe 8 or 10 blocks and you'll be fine. Right. He says, we're already staged way out of Route 46. We're way past 10 blocks. He said, both towns are underwater. So that was my first indication that this was not just a little storm.
Yeah.
This was gigantic, and we had already gone through. I think the last count was that was going to be the 5th high tide cycle we had gone through. So people who went to bed that night and there was not a lot of water, next thing woke up hours later and their houses were underwater. Not just their basements, but their living rooms are filled with water.
And I'm thinking that's probably the last sleep you got for a good long time, that little cat nap. What was the top priority once the storm passed? Was it protecting water infrastructure?
I mean, first off, overall, I mean, Governor Christie kind of laid out the plan. Okay, we got to take care of people. We got to get them home, housing. We have to get them food. We have to get electricity on. So he was working at the broader level. Let's take care of those things. My responsibility, day one, was to make sure that we had both clean water and we were handling, sewage, wastewater.
Yeah.
And so the biggest challenge for us was going to be, having to make sure both those happened. Because at that point in time, we had 70 water supply. We knew 70 water supply distributors were in trouble, right? Their companies were in trouble.
Right.
We also knew right after the storm, at least 80 and probably close to 100 of the sewage treatment facilities were in distress in some way, shape, or form. Wow. So, my job was to make sure that we had clean water, people had clean water, and that all those facilities were up and running.
Yeah.
And then we also had all the sewage treatment facilities were operational. And as you know, the biggest one, PVSC up in Newark, had gone completely underwater. Yeah. Most of their operations, the way it's operating, all their pumps and everything are underground, but a mile underground. That went completely underwater. So automatically, we knew the next morning that we had to be pumping literally 500 million gallons of raw sewage into the Raritan River. And we were trying to figure out how do we deal with that. And we had the Army Corps and EPA and others helping us pile in on that problem initially.
It's amazing and so daunting. I can't even imagine and that's just one thing. And I know the decision to put that stuff in the water was not made lightly, but it dissipates right over time. But what about power, bringing power to these facilities? What was the challenge there?
So what we realized after the storm, yet again, was that most of the facilities had anywhere between 2, some had 3, some had 4 days of diesel fuel on site to be able to keep their generators running.
Okay.
And that was good, those who had 3 or 4 days. But remember, power is going to be out for weeks for some of these facilities.
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden, we realized that we had to get fuel to these facilities all over the state. It wasn't just on the areas that were hit along the coastline, but across the state. So what we ended up doing is we started working with FEMA, and our worst nightmare started to happen.
Right.
We kept asking FEMA, where are you going to deliver this fuel?
Right.
And they kept showing us on a screen, well, it's right here. And so till I asked the tough question, it's like, so where's the distribution system behind the scenes of this? And they said, what distribution system? So we had to literally, I went and grabbed the head of the state police. I grabbed the head of, General Kniff, so Rick Fuentes, General Kniff. We sat down, I just grabbed him and said, guys, I need your help. Yeah. And they said, I need fuel and I need trucks to deliver them and I need people to deliver them. And, Colonel Fuentes goes, I got the fuel. Yeah. And General Kniff goes, I've got the trucks and I've got the resources to deliver it. Just tell us what you want. And so literally, on the spot, we created a process to deliver fuel. So we had our team from DEP scrambling behind the scenes, figuring out, because somewhere we were literally 4 hours away from those facilities shutting down because they didn't have fuel. So we started this kind of rapid response team of getting tickets, to fuel, to trucks, to moving them out. So we had to deal with it very quickly.
And I'm thinking, if I'm recalling correctly, I think Michelle Sekirker, our boss at BIA, was very much involved with this part, right?
She was the quarterback for our team for that. So literally it was like, okay, here you go, Michelle. Yeah. It's like, I got the pieces, put it together, and she ran with the ball, which was wonderful. So it's great to have her on the team.
And she still does it here. What do you recall about that helicopter ride? I don't know if it was the next day or 2 days after. What do you recall about that? It was just bedlam, right?
Well, there was 2 parts to it, Bob. On the 30th, which is the next day, our storm was kind of hit on the night of the 29th, the day of the 30th. It was too dangerous to go up in helicopters, so we couldn't. State police sent up a surveillance helicopter, and they kind of gave us kind of a direct line feed to the Rock in the governor's cabinet room, and we were watching it live for the feed from them and going up the coastline, and we just couldn't believe what we were seeing. It was like shocking to the governor and the whole cabinet of what happened to the coastline. And so by the end of that day, we were starting to get out in cars and whatever else. But the next morning, on the 31st, that really morning where we could all get up in helicopters and fly, we started from kind of the top of the coastline and went all the way down the coastline. Wow. And you could see the total destruction of homes and the back bay areas and all the rest of that. And it's interesting because you can see where the beaches were destroyed, but also the back bay areas had come in because of those high tide cycles, 5 of them. The water just kept pushing in and pushing in and pushing in. Yeah. So the water just didn't come from the ocean side. It came from the backside and pushed in towards the bay side in every direction. So what we could see was a lot of destruction, and it was just unbelievable. I think we were all shocked, even in the air, and kind of what we were seeing and what we had to do and what the kind of the task that was in front of us was kind of pretty obvious.
I recall somebody, it was like it went from Bayhead to Beirut, I think was the terminology somebody used. Let me read you some numbers from the impact of the storm. $37 billion in damages. This is just for New Jersey, including $7.8 billion for residential, $3.5 billion for business, $2.2 billion for municipalities, and $23.5 billion in hazard mitigation costs. So this leads into the question, Bob, for me, what is the mindset, when does the mindset of the Christie administration go from assessing the damage to let's restore? Is it something that happens organically? Is there one big powwow meeting? What happened?
So, I mean, there's the immediacy of the issues we dealt with were like, it was firefighting, the days and, hours and weeks. I mean, we were just constant firefighting of every single issue that we had to do. So it was triaging those issues constantly. And Governor Christie's leadership on that was just immense from what he did. And he got us all focused on, we got to take care of these priorities first. But at the same time, we started working at the Army Corps of Engineers and other departments trying to figure out the total damage assessment, because we had to go to the federal government to ask for help. And we knew that was coming, and we had to figure out how big the problem was from an economic point of view to the state. So shortly after, we pivoted very quickly. We kept moving on those key issues because it took weeks to deal with both the electricity and housing and food and all the rest of that. But at the same time, we pivoted very quickly from, what's the damage and how do we start to rebuild the state? And that was a big piece from Governor Christie, is we've got to rebuild, and we got to rebuild better and safer all along the way here.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't understand how much purview DEP has anyway on a normal time. But for this is just amazing. I want to read some of the recovery efforts that were done. This is not just right after the storm, but years after the storm. You're talking about removing houses and debris out of Barnegat Bay, installing better protections for wastewater facilities, home elevations, the Blue Acres program, the sheet piling installation, which was in Brick and Maniloking, dune reconstruction. I'm wondering, when I read that list off, and there's even more, there's tree removal, there's all this stuff. What do you think is the biggest accomplishment, or do you just look at that as one big whole thing?
Well, I mean, it's hard to pick off one item because we were working on so many different pieces. It was nice to see the coastline on Memorial Day of 2013, when virtually all the beaches were reopened, because we started rebuilding. And a lot of those, we had received the federal money, but we were just starting to implement a multi-year plan of rebuilding the coastline. And so that was a big piece. Memorial Day, but opening up the beaches, we had beaches cleaned, we had clean water, we had it all. That to me was really an important part of it. But the other part of it is the pace at which we had let people rebuild. We worked closely with the towns. The mayors were wonderful, especially in the coastal areas, for rebuilding. And we worked with them closely. So we were able to see a lot of rebuilding going on all during that. And we saw, as you just talked about, some key infrastructure, water infrastructure that we were able to get back on track, get it up and running very quickly. And probably the biggest piece that no one ever even talks about was there was 8 million cubic yards of debris that we had to be removed.
That's
And DEP was coordinating with every single town and county across the state to move that. And so we set up like 325 temporary debris management areas so we could consolidate all of that. We had to we coordinated clearing out the waterways with houses and boats. I think we had something like, I don't know how many, 2,000 boats that were damaged, sunk, or missing overall.
And I seem to recall, as you brought it up, finding locations to put the trash was a bit of a challenge because there just wasn't that much space to put it.
But I drove people crazy. I remember in our department because I kept yelling, get the debris off the streets, because people were pulling things out of their homes, but they were dropping it on their front yards and lawn. And this is not good health-wise or anything else. So we just made sure that stuff got off the streets, got to temporary debris management areas so that they could be processed.
Right. What's it like now for you when you go to the beach? Do you think about, wow, that looked a whole lot different 10 years ago? Or you're like, do you feel like a sense of accomplishment even?
No, absolutely feel a sense of accomplishment. And I was very proud to be part of the Christie team to make that happen. Governor Christie's leadership was the key part to that and made sure those priorities were always set and kept us on track on it. It wasn't just one and done. The meetings we had, in the governor's office, with the governor's team, with other cabinet officers for rebuilding was immense. It went on for years. I mean, I think we had 3 years of meetings like every Wednesday in his office to make sure we all stayed on track. And it was an important part to him that we got that done.
Yeah, I think you're right. Just having been leadership was key, not only just from the governor, who was great, and yourself, but the mayors. Even President Obama was there. It was like everybody had to lead, and I think that's what happened after the fact.
It's interesting, Bob, when people ask me what are the big things I learned from it, the first and foremost is leadership matters, is the way I put it. Governor Christie, it was incredible. The mayors, as you mentioned, did a phenomenal job. But you had all these cabinet officers and county officials and others that kind of rallied to be that leadership. But you needed one person at the top to make that happen. Right. The other thing I learned too was about having partners out there, having teams in place. DEP team was fabulous, and people stepped out of roles that didn't know. We had conservation officers roll up their sleeves and working on the coastline. We had parks people just with chainsaws, cutting trees down on streets everywhere. So everybody jumped in to help. And I look across the state, everybody stepped out of their jobs to focus on that. And the other things that were really important was that I learned, and I learned it early on. Governor Christie made something very clear to us. He said, "Don't stop making decisions." So no matter what happens, don't stop making it. Once you stop making decisions, things start backing up and things start going wrong. He said, "You're not going to get all your decisions right, but do not stop making decisions." And we learned it, and we kept making decisions. And I think we did a pretty good job on most of them. A few we made mistakes, but you go with it. So one other thing, Bob, it's kind of interesting. When people forget the second largest oil spill in the state's history occurred during Sandy.
Arthur Kill, I think.
Arthur Kill. Yeah. It was over 300,000 gallons when, 2 tanks floated up, hit each other, ruptured, and spilled 300,000 gallons of diesel fuel. And it's one of those things where no one even talks about it.
It was like
it just got cleaned up.
And it was a blip on the radar amid all the stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
But I just think, you did a great job with your leadership, Commissioner. I think the state owes you a big credit, and I definitely thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, Bob. Great to see you, and thanks.
Thank you again. We'll be back right after these words.
You're first. First to respond. First to put others' lives before your own. And in an emergency, you need a network that puts you first, that connects you to technology and each other, that's built with and for first responders. FirstNet, the only officially authorized wireless network for first responders. Because putting you first is our job.
Welcome back to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Well, NJBIA recently held its annual Women Business Leaders Forum in Atlantic City, and one of the discussions to come out of the 2-day event was, can you have it all? In one breakout session, moderated by NJ Spotlight News anchor Briana Vannozzi, 3 top women business executives shared their insights on achieving that elusive work-life balance. Here are some highlights from an enlightening discussion. Take a look.
So I thought it would be great just to start for each of you to touch on what having it all means for you, because it looks different for everyone. And I hope that that's what we get out of this, that it's not clear black and white on paper what having it all means. It's what fits for your life.
It looks like, for me, integration between my personal and professional life, and sort of like an ebb and flow. I don't think you can have it all at the same time. I think, too, that we still have a lot of asymmetrical roles in our homes. All of you ladies that are sitting in this room, and perhaps the men too, our work does not get left behind when we leave the office. It's coming home with us. Social media has elevated our expectations about what life is supposed to look like, including marriage. And so there's a lot of pressure, I think, to perform in all facets of your life. And I think for me, it's about self-care and owning, if you will, or accepting is probably a better word, whatever season of life you're in, and being present in that space during that time.
Diane, tell us what it looks like for you. And Rosanne touched on something I think is really important, which is just this societal impact and the workload balance, the emotional balance that we all carry. What does it look like, or what does it mean for you to have it all?
Thank you. The most basic thing I can say is just happiness. Just being happy and making sure you're surrounding yourself with people and a schedule and a family and a career that you enjoy. I think balance is so personal and different for everyone, and having it all, everybody that hears that, their definition of all is different, and that's okay. And everybody has to find their own piece. As I was going through different phases of my life, I realized, I think when my kids were in grammar school, what could I do to stop feeling so much on a treadmill or so distracted? And one of the things that I had a revelation one day was I can change my schedule and I can reorganize my day to make myself available to be more present at what I was doing. So I changed mostly not how much I slept, but my sleep schedule. And I started to get up at like 4 a.m., a little before 4, and I would work and get ahead of my day. And sometimes not even turn my email on, and just felt like I got to a place where when I got the kids up for school and got them ready to school, I was more present. And I think that really, for me, led to happiness. And it has changed over the years, because then your kids get older and they go to high school and then they start to drive, and you're not getting up at 4 a.m. because you're staying up until they get home, and which isn't 4
So it
a.m.
never ends.
Yes, sorry about that. It never ends, and it's and then it changes now that we're empty nesters, and now I'm thinking about, wow, I'm maybe very within a 5-year window of retiring. What's that going to look like? So it's okay to be less rigid.
You know, first and foremost, there is a component of understanding what you need that we forget about, right? We worry about, geez, how am I going to take care of my kids, my family, my friends, meet my commitments? And there's this emotional support system that you have to remember for yourself. And 9 times out of 10, because you don't want to feel vulnerable, you don't ask for. And there's a societal stigma about, if you don't do it all alone, then you know what, you're not capable probably of taking on more challenges or doing other things. You do have to take a look at your network of people. And there's that saying that someone wise in this room once said to me, this whole "it takes a village." That spans at work, seeking out mentors. That's your community, that's your neighborhood, that's your network of family and friends. There is, and it does change. You know, you talked about peer groups, but it's so important because it starts with you leaning in and wanting to open up the conversation and take the risk to talk openly, as you shared, about certain things. And you'll find that folks are willing to help and be there. And as a matter of fact, they also receive back a gift from, being able to help you as well. And it's fulfilling for them. But it's challenging your ways of thinking, changing the way you approach your thought process about life and work, and trying to be all things to everyone all the time, communicating openly. It's funny, I was going through a time in my life, and I'll share a personal story very quickly, where I was in that grind mode on the trajectory. I thought you had to be accessible 24/7. You had to take your work home with you. It was this never ending, and I was burning out and not even seeing it. And then all of a sudden, life was ripped out from under me. My child's childcare, from one day to the next, because of some other crisis with my caregiver. just wasn't there. And I remember, oh my God, I just have to drop everything now. I have to go home. What am I going to do? I'm on the phone with my husband. We have no solution. I've got to go home. And like just in this panic mode. And as I was in the school picking up my child, one of the other mothers, who I knew very well from the neighborhood and the school system, overheard me, and she says, I don't know if you're comfortable with this or not, but I happen to take care of 2 other children. And I was just in such a panic mode. Let me go home. I don't know. I have to have this perfect solution for my child, right? Otherwise, I'm a bad mother, and then I'm not going to be able to work, and this is just going to ruin everything. My boss is just not going to trust me anymore. And I went home, and I said, well, wait, hold on a second. First of all, the cost of childcare is crazy. So whatever she charges me is not going to. It's by comparison. I'm not going to have this. The childcare, you have to be picked up by 5 p.m. and how's that going to impact work? And well, she doesn't have a time. She lives 2 blocks away from school and home, and she's more than willing. And my daughter has a social network accessible, and she's a disciplinarian. So I knew homework was getting done. But the point is, you just don't ask for it. You don't bother to engage folks. And so you could miss opportunities to get the help that you need.
There is a lot of pressure. I mean, I can speak for myself. I think one of the reasons I was asked to do this was not just because of my position on TV, but also because of juggling so much. And when I came back from maternity leave from having my first child, I decided to be very public with the fact that I had battled postpartum depression and anxiety. And I needed to shut off my social media and all of these images of everyone, just seemingly thriving in their careers while juggling all of their kids, and their relationships looked perfect. And I thought, gosh, things have typically come really easily for me. And why isn't this? And it was finding my groove and not caring about what that image needed to look like. But how do you do that, Rosanne? Because I know for me, asking for help is really, really hard. Why is it so hard? But we need the help, right?
I'm not a therapist, but I think, the way I see it is I've always thought, and probably I'm just going to assume all of you type A's in the room feel the same way, that being vulnerable and asking for help is a sign of weakness. And I've grown to accept that being vulnerable and asking for help is really courageous. It allows me to stay humble and acknowledge what I don't know. And asking for help is just the first hurdle. It's, who are you asking help from? Where do you find your people? And the way I did that was a lot of networking, dipping my toe in all kinds of environments, meeting a lot of people, being curious about people. And I ended up creating a peer group that we're the best of friends now. There's 9 of us. We get together once a month. And these are the gals that I'm the most vulnerable with, that see every part of me. And they also give me the feedback I need to excel, not just in my professional life, but in my personal life. So that's what it looks like for me to ask for help.
What is the best way to say no? Right? Because
no. You know what women do? No, because blah, 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 blah. No, I can't because I'm sorry, because, or we say, we like to say I just want to know. Yeah. It's like minimizes us.
I don't have that issue. My husband has that issue. Every time a friend asks us to do something we really don't want to do, he's like, well, no. And he makes up an excuse. No, just say no. Right. It's that simple for me. It depends on, what you're saying no to. Sometimes it does require a conversation. If it's work and your boss wants you to do an extra assignment, you have to say no. And yes, there might be a need to explain, I've got 5 other projects. They might not even be aware. So sometimes it does involve making other folks aware of how full your plate is and being the one to recommend giving someone else an opportunity. If it's your personal situation and your homebody and your friends are the party animals, no is the simple answer.
All right, thank you to all the speakers in that NJBI Women Business Leaders Forum discussion. And thank you all for joining us on NJBI's Minding Business. We'll see you next time.